right, Mr. Weaver. I wanted to ask you, how would you compare pop culture from when you were a kid to now? I mean, a teenager, of course, and to high school nowadays.
Well, I think the biggest difference is that pop culture today, although it was probably the same back then, and as I think about it, I'm realizing it actually wasn't. Today, I think pop culture centers around the concept of sex. It celebrates sex, whereas the pop culture of my era, although there were some songs and maybe some supermodels who were sex symbols, the visual representation and the verbal representation of sex and sexual scenes wasn't as in your face back when I was a kid. So I started thinking about like what drove that, and at the base of it was probably the internet, and I'll address that later. But really, I think TV and media drive everybody's um, perception and reality of pop culture. So back in the 80s and early 90s, it was big sweaters. Maybe you had some tight jeans. Maybe you had tight jeans. Absolutely no cleavage or no undergarments were exposed. Um, and you juxtapose that with what goes on today, and smaller is better, tighter is better. Body parts are no longer taboo, so young ladies are comfortable with exposing their cleavage and other parts of their body, like high shorts and things like that. Whereas I think in the 80s and 90s, like that wasn't either socially appropriate or the style. Um, Language and situations on TV have also changed. So another aspect of pop culture, the happy days era is gone. The era of Barney Miller and MASH, where there was sexual tension present in some of those television shows. It wasn't, the imagery wasn't sexual. The language wasn't sexual. It was way more reserved than it is today. Music, I find that a lot of the popular music, we try to make mixes for our field hockey team, and I find myself having to really peruse the lyrics in order to make sure that they're appropriate to be played publicly. And these are the songs that these young people are listening to day in, day out, like all day, every day. And I find them to be misogynistic. I find them to be overtly sexual and in some ways disturbing. Now, that's not to say our parents didn't feel the same way about our music when we were teenagers, but as I still listen to that music from the 80s, I'm not finding overtly sexual, misogynistic lyrics in the top 40 of my era. So
I would say it was rarely misogynistic at all. If there was any sexual content, it would just be like
yeah, like
basic stuff to begin with. It like nowadays it'd be like sixth grade humor.
yeah, totally.
Um, and it is astounding actually, but I'd also say that in television, a lot of things have become more acceptable too. That would have been a problem back then.
Yeah, I look at language and the use of what we would consider to be curse words today is commonplace, and it gets even worse past like 9 o'clock, which in the old days, like there was no, that wasn't possible at all. So somewhere along the line, we as a society became insensitive to all of these things: sex, drugs, and sort of what we would call like I don't know, the subculture back then. And I really think the internet has played a huge role in that. Everybody has access to imagery and content from every aspect of the world. So I don't know that I don't want to sound like I'm passing judgment on pop culture today, but I think the differences are the comfort level with even things like violence has just been sort of fueled by access to the images and access to the concept via the internet, and then secondarily probably the internet drives music, and the internet drives like visual television style of entertainment as well. So I would say that in general, if I had to like summarize how the two eras have differed in pop culture, I think sexuality is probably at the core of the differences, and that shines through music, dress, TV, all those typical aspects of pop culture we consider.
Yeah. It I even just like my father talking about the past and everything, and you as well. It's just like, well, there's a lot of differences in how things have changed. Like it's very obvious to see where things started to change sometimes, and then there's also things like television where it was just this either rapid or just quick to come. Rapid, or it was a slow move, basically, in most of these subjects. So thanks for being on.
Yeah, no worries, man.
Yeah.
My pleasure.